And it's like I get to touch some kind of mystery that I'm actually a part of. I just maybe have a poor memory, but there's something beautiful about that circling back that feels particularly meaningful right now. And I talked about this a little bit in my craft talk of returning to readings that I know that are familiar to me right now, and that is a comfort, not just that I've written, but other work that is, books I love. Returning to those right now feels really comforting. So this is a book about fear, but I wrote about fear through the lens of cultural icons. And so I'm going to read from 2 essays and hopefully read a little less than 20 minutes. And these 2 essays are both very personal, and yet they are coming through the lens of these kind of bigger cultural icons. Well, one of them is. And that's a lot, I think, of what fear is. It's personal, it's contextual. And so these essays are really contending with that personal experience with fear through the lens of these cultural or larger icons. So I think I'll actually start with an essay called Ozzy Osbourne. Maybe you've heard of him. Heavy metal rock star, also on a reality TV show that I never watched. Ozzy Osbourne. He bit the head off a bat. He bit the head off a dove. Unlike the dove, a bat has teeth, a nose. A bat has long wings that spread to reveal tender bones, like those of the human hand. It has eyelids and hair. A bat has a face like a human's went into the dark face of a human. A mouth into a mouth, a voice into a voice. And did I tell Joy about it, or did Jimmy tell us? We church-bound kids of the 1980s knew nothing of Ozzy Osbourne, Prince of Darkness, former lead singer of a band called Black Sabbath, until the televangelist leaned into the microphone and whispered, "Devil." After that, we learned all we could. We gathered under the secretive lights of the carport. We leaned into each other's faces and whispered, Ozzy. The name fizzed in our mouths, sweet and possibly rotting. Ozzy bit the head off a bat. He bit the head off a dove. The dove happened before the bat. Ozzy had stashed 3 doves in his pocket and carried them into the offices of his new record label. He would be more than their devil. He would surprise them with this symbol of peace and light. The doves waited in his pocket, 3 apples in the dark. 2 flew up as planned, flapping around the room as if looking for an exit. Ozzy held on to the 3rd. It was a big day. A photographer was present, and how exciting it must have been when the rock star, already so photogenic in his white plaid dinner jacket and jeans and long, looked to the 3rd dove. In the first of 4 photos, Ozzy cups the bird in both hands with a tenderness usually reserved for the wounded. In the second photo, the bird head is in his mouth. The woman sitting next to Ozzy is still leaning toward him in the 3rd photo and still smiling, even though she is looking directly at the bird's severed head as it falls from Ozzy's mouth, photographed midair, hovering next to a cross that hangs from a chain around Ozzy's neck. It's only in the last photo that the woman silently registers the kill. Maybe 4 seconds have passed. Ozzy's eyes cross and leave nothing straight. Evil, said the televangelist. Ozzy is the devil. The first time he said devil, the word was a hammock beneath my brain. It carried the weight of a darkness it didn't know how to lift. For a moment, I rested, hung out, got lazy. The word devil let me contain, without consideration, all the dualities we can conceive but not perceive, as Barthes once said. But when the preacher repeated devil, the word swiped over my body, leaving its trace like the hands of older girls who sometimes pushed me when I walked by in the school hallway, They never said a word. They hit and kept walking as if nothing had changed. But my body registered the message. Nothing, their touch said. You mean nothing. Devil, said the preacher until he turned red. The only devil that came to mind was the cartoon red guy with a pitchfork and no pants. Devil of movies and games, devil of play, devil, devil, repeated. The word no longer felt like a word. The same thing happened when I practiced my signature. I wrote my name over and over until the words weren't words. My brain got tired and no longer attached the word to any known meaning. I didn't know the term for this expression. I didn't have the words semantic exhaustion or semantic satiation or bleaching, depletion, a glare. I didn't yet know how to say jamais vu, meaning never seen, but I knew the feeling, jamais vu. This is what it feels like to categorize someone, to erase them. Devil, said the preacher. Ozzy, we said. The moths above the carport banged their heads against the lights. A mile away, the town I came from was sinking into the emptiness of strip malls and church signs whose warnings continued to shame us. We had a different story to tell. Ozzy bit the head off a bat. A fan threw the bat onto the stage. Dazed by the spotlight, the bat didn't move. Ozzy picked it up and thought it was rubber until he put the head of the bat into his mouth and the bat bit back. For months, Ozzy had to get painful rabies shots in his stomach. To draw out that moment of pain for each other, we imagined a needle, the width of an old oak tree, jabbed into his gut. Maybe we loved to repeat this story because we felt like the bat, shoved into a darkness it couldn't understand. Or maybe we thought we loved animals and wanted to protect them. Maybe we still believed that all creatures are equal and deserve to be loved. Maybe we were learning to say that there is great suffering all around. Ozzy snorted a line of ants like cocaine, and every day he drank 4 gallons of whiskey and topped it off with morphine and sleeping pills and Rohypnol. Ozzy baptized audiences with pig intestines and crawled under his piano in a white suit with a shotgun in one hand and a knife in the other to kill 17 of his own cats. Ozzy ran into his wife's room wearing only his underwear. They say I must kill you, he told her. He doesn't remember trying to strangle her. He doesn't remember that she bashed a bottle over his head. He only remembers the glaring voices telling him what to do. The voices confirmed that the devil was inside of him. The devil is in all of us, he said. All of the time. Us, he said. Us. Yes, we said. Us. The devil is inside. We'd heard it before. We knew the other Prince of Darkness and his burning lake. God used to call the devil the brightest angel, morning star, opening act for the sun. Lucifer. As if naming him light weren't enough, God covered Lucifer in gemstones of diamonds and sapphires. His foot, made of brass, rested on God's head. He was as bright as any being then. But under the light we were taught to read as infinite knowledge. There could be no questions, only certainty, only faith. When Lucifer refused to accept what he was told, God threw him out. Lucifer fell out of heaven and toward our earth, screaming his confusion and loneliness into us. But we didn't want allegory. We needed a new song. We needed a way to converse with our refusals. We weren't children anymore. We were preteens. We measured the height of our bangs with a straight ruler and no longer wore our pants with pleats. We carried black eyeliner in our bags and we were about to put it on. This was the year before we got cable, before we found MTV, before we heard Ozzy scream at a pitch that reverbs, verbs, comes alive and will not be caught. At the edge of the carport, bats swung by the eaves, opening their mouths to make sounds too high in pitch for any human to hear. We heard only their wings, like dry hands rubbing against someone's cheek. Ozzy, we whispered, opening our dark mouths. A head went inside a head. And when we said that, a mouth went into a mouth. Something started to break down inside. It was a kind of order. The story of the bat unwound all we were taught to believe and could no longer accept as our own. The story stabbed the inner ear where equilibrium lives until we were as disoriented as we knew ourselves to be. In that vibrating moment, the whole of human suffering seemed as if it might come clean out of our mouths to be heard, even as it receded deeper inside, and Decibel loved the bones with a sound that might speak for the ache. So that's the first essay, more disorienting than the second I'll read. That one's probably very hard to hear orally aloud. I'm recognizing as I read it, there's something about seeing it on the page that helps me comprehend the variety of moves. It's like one that's just working by juxtaposition. It's almost like two songs playing at once. That's kind of why it's fun to read your work. You get to hear it in this weird way, learn about it in a different way. Okay, the second, last essay I'll read. It's shorter than the one I just read, maybe about the same length. It's called Centaur, a bit more narrative. To be wild takes thistle and sand, not this hay and fence. This horse and I are domesticated. We are animals who know the rules. I will brush her and she will be brushed. I will remove that blanket and get the dust off her flanks, and I will tell myself that their constant twitching in sunlight or wind is just a reflex and not preparation, not a rising in her of all the fears in me, of all the ways that we will hurt each other. I feel the horse feeling my fear as I stand outside of her gate. Crows gather on a nearby branch. They talk in low tones, the way an audience does before a show. I shake with nerves. I should be fine. This horse belongs to a little girl. She rides her every day, sometimes without a saddle. The girl holds the horse's mane in her hands and cinches her legs around a body that lets her float over fields. They go together without pull or force. Besides, my friend promised that this horse would be easy to care for while his family was away. To care for, he said, but I heard him say she would be easy to take care of. I would put her hay in the stall, as he showed me, and break the thin layer of ice in the bucket so she can drink, so she can pull water through teeth that break entire apples in half. Wilder horses use their teeth as a weapon. I once watched a documentary about an experienced trainer who knew that to handle a horse requires a tender firmness called give. He was calm and steady, even when the horse rose up on her hind legs, opened her mouth, and plunged her front teeth into his forehead. The skin flapped back, revealing the bone of his skull. There's one thing to watch out for, my friend said. The horse chewed the air, strengthening her vice-grip jaw. What's that? I asked. She casts. My friend walked around the barn and through the gate. Right, I said, as if I understood. He latched the gate, locking us all inside. It's when a horse rolls onto her back and gets stuck. And that's bad, I said. Too long like that and she'll die. He held one hand over the other and smacked. Her organs would crush her heart. We walked closer to her. She snapped her head up and down as if seeing something we couldn't. Her brown eyes reflected a cloud, or maybe that was a warning. I couldn't tell. I don't know horses. All I know of them I learned from the Rolling Stones and Anne of Green Gables. Wild horses couldn't drag me away, sing the Stones. Wild horses won't drag the secret from me, Anne says. How would wild horses drag a secret from a person anyhow? What do I do? I asked. He pointed to a yellow rope hanging from the barn wall. Use that, tie it around a leg, and then roll her towards you until she stands. I nodded, imagining her hooves swinging through the air. Don't worry, he said. Now the horse's family is gone on their vacation. The horse and I are all alone. I'm shivering, and not because it's cold out. I have to take off her green blanket and brush her body. I have to reach under her wide chest to unsnap the straps that hold her blanket in place. I have to touch her. I begin to lift the thin rope that holds the gate closed. She stomps, she pounds the ground flat and shows what hooves can do. I step inside and close the gate. The crows clap their wings. The horse exhales a fog. I hold up the brush. Time to brush you, I say. I sound calm. I can sound calm. She twitches. She lifts and lowers her head. I have this brush, I say. The brush leaves its mark on my tightening hand. Just a brush, I say. My voice doesn't sound like my voice. I take a slow step and she begins to trot. Or is that a canter? She comes at me. The branches crackle beneath her like a pulse. Stop, I say. I don't have carrots. I step back, slamming into a fence post. She comes at me, and there's no way to stop what's happening, even as I see it will happen. The brush hits the ground. I raise my emptied hands. Her face comes at my face, lashes on her eyelids, nostrils, delicate hairs on her nose. She lowers her head and rams it into my chest, hitting the bone of her long face into the long bone of my sternum. She pins me to the fence post. I can feel the heat of her body through my coat. She presses harder, and I gasp as my spine pushes against the rough wood of the fence, so different from the smooth logs that make the home nearby that is suddenly so far away. I sat in that house just moments ago and watched hummingbirds drink red sugar water. I sat beneath a down blanket feeling the warmth of little birds, even though they are dead. I listened for the coyotes to yelp their human cries. It was only the distance between us that let me find comfort in the connection. Now, I'm not sure where the horse's body stops and mine begins. Her head plunges into my chest. Her mouth enters my heart with a message. I know you, girl. You closed up clam. You can't get away. Stop hiding. Horse lovers say a horse will show you who you are. Her head digs deep. I can't feel my face or think. Let me think. Even snails speak. Bears mourn the dead. Some male birds try to mate with each other, and they aren't concerned with making anything other than contact. I am about to be crushed. I'm going to be destroyed by what I must care for. I feel the give and give way. I fold over her. I lean into her head with my chest, drape my head over her neck. My hands find her ears. I idle my thumbs in their warmth. Our bodies slow down. Our breath follows the same clock. The first snow falls on our common body and into the field of bunch grass where we stand. Show me, I whisper into her neck. My thumbs trace the widening edges of her ears down to her mane. I tuck each thumb into that coarse hair and thread my fingers behind, slowly tightening the clamp of each hand. I take a single breath. I am the girl who feels the softness of ears, and I am the girl who grabs hold of her mane and pulls her away hard. She steps back. She lets me go. Thank you very much. Thank you.